the difference is more of because the state is growing bigger and bigger, more people are there, so it's the administrative part of it changes. But when it comes to the Sharia ruling, they don't change; they stay the same, of course. And the Sharia ruling has to be very clear. It does not change the time or place. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's commands are objective and specific for all the nations. So it does not change the time and place. Unfortunately, we hear these terminologies and have been used loosely as if the rules of Allah change time and place. They don't. If the reality changes, then we are looking for that specific reality of Allah. I hope that it's clear, and if it's not clear, we can discuss that in the Q&A part as well. But it's an important aspect of it that we should understand. Similarly, it's not in the hukm of Allah evolve over the time. As we find sometimes people are talking about something that's haram very clearly, they start saying, well, now we are in a difficult situation to make it permissible, or mubah, and then from mubah it becomes something disliked, or disliked and mubah, permissible, and then we should recommend these things for other people to do it. And then nowadays, and I can give you examples later on, inshallah, but nowadays we find the things that at one point in my lifetime, obviously I'm much older than you guys, but in my lifetime I have seen things have gone from considered by majority of people as haram, and now they are pushing it as if it's an obligation. It's an act of ibadah, and if you don't practice that this way, then you are committing a sin as if. Okay? That's the situation of the ummah. But it's very, so we should understand these things as well, inshallah. Examples also as well, as I said. Okay, so we talked about financial institutions or the economic system. Today we talk about the judiciary in the time of Uthman and Affan. And we talk about judiciary. The first thing that comes to mind is judges supposed to be there, right? So in Islam, we have three types of judges. Islam mentioned the slide, but I just like to mention that though. Three types of judges. One is called the type of judge that takes care of the market affairs. I talked about it in the time when we were discussing the Omar's era. But the market affairs meaning that the judges will go into the marketplaces and see if there is any kind of cheating is going on. Yeah. For example, we check the balances, the balance of the mizan, or what you call it. It's just so people are not stealing by faulty skills. So that's one of the things that they do. Or they look at the quality of the goods that they're selling, whether the quality is as what they have told the customers. And if there is any problem, the judge can give a ticket or a punishment, like for example, a fine can be done right there. Second kind of judges are the one which is called judges for the khusumat. Khusumat are the issues that people have on each other. Yeah, like I was just talking about the example of somebody who ran the Kazi scheme and he stole the wealth from some people. Now, there are people who come and they say, well, this guy has stolen the money. How do you deal with that kind of situation? So the Qadi, who is, or the office of this, these judges, which is called Khusumat, to be in different areas spread out, they will make the judgment. And in Islam, we don't have bench of judges. What I mean by that is you can have consultants, you can have advisors, or a judge to make a judgment, but it's not the majority of the judges will rule something. Does that make sense? I'm saying it? So it's like nowadays they have, like for example, in the United States they have the security, it's called Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court they have 9 judges, right? And out of those 9 judges, they go by the majority, whatever the majority decides. In Islam, you always have one judge. Judge will make a decision. He can consult other judges, as we will see in the time of Uthman bin Affan. He used to have consultants around him who would give him advice. But the judgment will be just one, whichever judge, whoever the judge is. Okay. And the third kind of judge is the one who takes care of the affairs between the people and the rulers. So rulers are not off the hook. There's checks and balances in Islam, and if the ruler is oppressing the people or taking the of the people, whichever way, or he is doing the burden on the people. In that case, they can file the case with the office, which is called Adi Madalim, or the office of Madlama. Madlama is the one who will take care of the issues between the rulers, whoever the rulers are, whether it's the Khalifa, whether it's the Wali, whoever it is, and the people. And one of the key things about that is, if there is a case going on against the Khalifa, for example, Khalifa does not have the authority to change the judge. Okay? So the judge will be, it's not like you bring the judge or you buy you can buy the judgment on your behalf, things like that. Okay? So these are three kinds of judges. Now, so we talked about that. When it comes to judiciary institutions, as I said, the main thing that changed, which is not a change, which is a continuation from the time of Rasulullah to Abu Bakr to Umar. In the time of Uthman, state grew bigger, and hence that he had to delegate the job in a different way, which is called administration. The administration part of running the affairs is something that is up to the head of the state in Islam. He's the one who decides, and he can pass the judgment on those things. Obviously, none of those things can be against the Quran Sunnah, number one. Islam is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who allowed this administrative part for the Khalifa to decide. And that's an important aspect of it as well to understand. Sometimes when we say that Islam is a comprehensive way of life, it deals with all affairs of life. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have revealed this book that explains everything. Now, the people say, okay, what about the traffic lights? What about the speeding tickets that people get? So this is administration of the state. It's not the issues, for example, the halal and haram between when it comes to the ashia or the things or the actions. Okay, so for example, in Islam, to move the movement of the people from one place to another place, that is a halal action. Of course, the point A to point B that you're going to is for a halal cause as well, right? So now, how you go there from point A to point B, that is left to the people. That is a mubah aspect of it. Mubah, its permissibility, also comes from Islam. Like for example, in the time of Rasulullah, people were moving on foot or camels or horses or whatever kind of mounts were available. Now people have cars or motorcycles or airplanes or ships and so on and so forth. So that's just a means. Yeah? So these means are left to the people as mubah category permissible. And you can use similarly, judiciary when it comes, the judgments will always come from the Sharia. Now, the process of how, whether you're going to have these kind of chairs in the court system, or they will be made of wood, or there will be benches, or you will be sitting on the floor. That's up to these are all administration issues. Yeah, but dealing equally, that's from Sharia. No matter what comes in, a Kafir or Muslim, the both will be dealt equally from the perspective of that they both get justice. Just because somebody is a Muslim does not mean that he has the right to oppress a non-Muslim in the Islamic state, yeah? And vice versa. Okay. So now when it comes to the courthouses that we pull up, it is mentioned that really the first courthouses were established in the time of Uthman bin Affan. Before that, in the time of Rasulullah and Abu Bakr and Umar, they were in general passing judgments in the masjid. And when you guys read the Sirah books, for example, when the term masjid is used, or they made it pass the judgment in masjid, that's by default talking about Masjid Nabawi, because that was basically the main headquarters for all sorts of activities for the Amir al-Mu'minin at that time. So in the time of Uthman, because of the need, so the courthouses were established. Yeah. So now today when we see court system or courthouses are there, where the judge will come and sit, and the defendant and the one who was filing the case, plaintiff, defendant, whatever it's called, they will be presented in front of the judge in the courthouse, and he would pass the judgment there. Okay, so that was in the time of Uthman bin Affan. judges over there, in general you find the names Ali ibn Abi Talib, Zayd ibn Thabit, and Asad ibn Yazid. Now, these were the one, Sayyid ibn Yazid actually, sorry, Sayyid ibn Yazid. So these were the ones who were the judges in the time of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. But in general, Uthman himself is the one who was the judge, main judge. Yeah? So he was in general taking care of any kind of a judgment or any kind of issue was brought up in Medina. Let's not forget, the state was much bigger than Medina. Medina was the one where Uthman was residing and most of the Sahaba were there. But if Uthman in general, even though he had consultants, he was using them as consultants for himself. But when it comes to the main judge in Medina, Uthman kept it to himself. Okay. So he used to take advice from Talha ibn Ubaidullah, Zubair, Abdurrahman bin Auf, and Ali. So now these four Sahaba, as you can see, consistently these names are brought up for important issues whenever they were dealt. These were from the very same 10 Sahaba who were given the glad tidings of Jannah. And they were Muslims from the beginning time of Rasulullah. So they were prepared for all these kind of difficult tasks. Hence, we find the whole Farashidi, they would always turn back to the Sahaba for consultants. Okay. In Tariq al-Tabri, it mentioned that in the time of Uthman, Zayd bin Thabit was in charge of the judiciary, which indicates Uthman kept Zayd in charge of the judiciary and that he had permission to pass judgment in disputes. So Zayd bin Thabit, again, he was also one of the great Sahaba of Rasulullah, one of the Qur'an of the Quran, the Hafiz al-Quran, the one who compiled the Quran and Abu Bakr, and then even in the time of Uthman, he helped him out with making the Mus'haf also. The first Mus'haf, or the copies of the Mus'haf were created in the time of Uthman bin Affan. Quran was compiled and preserved from the time of Rasulullah. Well, it was preserved by Rasulullah and compiled in one place in the time of Abu Bakr. Okay. So now, the question comes in is, what does it mean then if the Zayd was the one who was appointed also, and other reports talk about that Uthman bin Affan did not make any judges in Medina? So in general, you see, in Islam, we don't do this, that for example, there are reports are mentioned, there are hadith compiled, and seemingly you feel like those hadith or reports are contradictory. Doesn't necessarily mean they are contradictory reports. It could be a perspective of one person, or understanding of one person, what he saw or what he heard. This is a very normal behavior, human behavior. Yeah. How many of you have attended the lecture I did for Ikhtilaf in Islam? Any of you here did that? Different opinions? 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I mentioned a sentence. I'm trying to remember what the sentence was. There's a sentence in English language even that has 7 words, and the way you say the 7 words, even though it's the same exact 7 words, but it changes the meaning. And it was like this. I never said she stole my money. So this is 7 words, right? So if I say like this, now listen to it. I never said she stole my money. You see? It sounds like I did not say something else said it. Yeah? Okay, if I say I never said she stole my money. So now, because of the stress on the never, so it doesn't mean that I never said it, but she still stole my money. See what's going on? And if I say, I never said she stole my money. Okay, if I never said it, I probably wrote it down, or I told somebody, or somebody else said it on my behalf, and so on and so forth. And you guys can practice. I'm not going to go all 7 words now, but you can practice that. Every time you stress a different word, it changes the meaning of the sentence. So now, the point here is, when you read the reports, this seemingly look like contradictory does not necessarily mean they are contradictory. This is why the term which you hear a lot, that you do the reconciliation and to understand that those two reports, the seemingly look contradictory, why are they like this? It could be that one is false. Of course, we look at the narration and make sure that there is no fabrication, something has happened. At the same time, you want to make sure that if one of the reports is talking about a general ruling and another one is the عام خاص, which is general or exception to the case. One could be abrogation, one could be abrogated or abrogated ruling, nasikh or mansukh. Or one is supposed to be preferred to the other, which is tarjih, and tatbiq is when you can combine both and take both together. So this is how you do it. Anyways, so here they say that so as long as possible to reconcile the reports, it's better to accept them both rather than accepting only one without any reason. So they may be reconciled by noting that Uthman retained the judges in Medina to pass judgment in some cases, but the important cases he took care of himself. Okay? Now, in some cases, Uthman allowed the judges themselves are on their own, they're judges in the places, or in some cases, the Wali can be the judges themselves as well. Okay? So Wali is the governor of a province or a wilayah. Like for example, Medina was a wilayah, Makkah was a wilayah, or Sham, or Misr, and so on and so forth. And some examples are, so for example, Ya'la ibn Umayyah was both governor and judge of Sana'a. Sana'a is in Yemen, yeah. While other places you find there were judges who were not walis, they were just whatever. Okay, in the time of Umar was very keen on being connected to the judges. He was very much involved, engaged, finding out, okay, you have passed his judgments, how did you pass the judgments, for example, or what was behind it. So he was very keen. And one of the reasons is Umar wanted to make sure that, first of all, the Sahaba stayed around Medina most of the time. So it can establish the deen firmly. So information does not just get lost or something. And that was about 10 years or so. So that was good enough period of time. So Uthman allowed the Sahaba to go. And these people were well prepared now. So Uthman, Umar's time, you see that there's more and more communication between the judges and Umar. But in the case of Uthman, you see really that kind of communication happening with the judges. Okay. Now, Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar, he was asked by Uthman to be a judge. Now, when Uthman asked him, so Sahaba, subhanAllah, one who, in general, if somebody understood that he is not capable of a position and he was asked to do it, he would try to excuse himself. Remember Umar, for example, in the time of Surah Hudaybiyah, Rasulullah wanted him to go to the Makkah and talk to the Makkans, and he excused himself, and he offered Uthman to be the one. Now, similarly, Ibn Umar was asked to be the judge by Uthman. He asked him, do you remember what Rasulullah said, Man aada billahi faqad aada bi ma'ad? So he said, whoever seeks refuge with Allah, refuge from Allah, has indeed sought an accident. So Uthman said, yes. So he said, I seek refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this position. I don't want to be in this position, and hence Uthman did not ask him again. Okay. These are few of the judges in the time of Uthman ibn Affan that he assigned. Zayd bin Thabit was in Medina, Abu Darda was in Damashq, Ka'ab bin Sur was Basra, and you can see Abu Musa al-Ashari was in Basra as well, and Qadi Shuraih was in Kufa. I just want to take a pause about Qadi Shuraih. Any of you heard this name before? Yeah? You've heard it. So he is one of the most famous judges who have lived all the eras of the Khulafa Rashidin. He became Muslim in the time of Rasulullah in Yemen. But he did not meet Rasulullah. That's why he was referred as a tabi'. Even though he became Muslim in the time of Rasulullah. So he became a judge throughout the Khulafa Rashidin, and it was in the time of Uthman as well, and the time of Ali. The famous incident of when a Yehudi stole the armor of Ali radiallahu anhu, and he took it to Qadi Shaykh, and Qadi Shaykh passed the judgment in favor of the Jew. Because Ali was not able to produce the witnesses, proper witnesses. And that was enough for the Jew to become a Muslim, to see the justice of Islam. The Amir al-Mu'mineen is there, and he's the one who's fighting the case for himself, and he loses the case. Yeah? Even though the whole Ummah entrusted him to be the ruler over them, when it comes to judgment, yes, you can come and say something, doesn't mean that you can get away by whatever you say. You have to go through the same process like anybody else. And that's what Islam teaches us. Yeah? So Qadi Shaykh was one of the judges in the time of Uthman bin Affan as well. Okay. In general, for Rashidin's time, there was a lot of judgments were made, and they became some of them became the sources for us to return back to. When I say sources, because if Khulafa Rashidin made the judgments, and specifically some of the adoption that they made, and there was a consensus among the Sahaba, that it becomes ijma' of Sahaba, consensus of Sahaba, that can be taken as source of evidence to extract more roots as well. Okay. So you find that many of the qisas, offenses, hudud, punishments, and ta'zir. So the difference between hudud or had and ta'zir is, had is a punishment that was clearly definite from Quran and Sunnah. Ta'zir is the one that is by the head of the state, whether it was by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so on and so forth. They have the right to make the punishment for a specific crime. Okay. So qisas is something which is a retribution. In the case of a killing, the retribution is somebody killed somebody amalan, intentionally. Then the punishment is there's a capital punishment in Islam. Unless and this is from the Quran and the Sunnah that we find that the ruling about the subject, unless the family members they agree to take the blood money, or they can forgive if they want to. And there's a reason I'm talking about that, because one of the first cases that came in the time of Uthman bin Affan was the killing of the people who were engaged in assassination of Umar al-Khattab. And the person who killed 3 people was Ubaydullah bin Umar al-Khattab. Okay, so what happened was, so the hadith also talks about the same subject. I'm not going into detail of that. Ubaydullah ibn Umar, this is the first case came in the time of Uthman. So when Abu Lulu, he killed, what's his name, Umar al-Khattab in the Salat al-Fajr, and then he killed himself as well. So people grabbed him and he killed himself. Now, Ubaydullah, he got the information on who was engaged in killing of Umar al-Khattab. So he went after Jufaynah was one, and the one who was holding that same dagger that Abu Lulu used against Umar al-Khattab, and also Hormuzan, who used to be one of the rulers of the Persia. And another report talks about he killed his daughter as well. Now, what happened was, and that happened when Umar was still alive. Umar was stabbed, and he lived for a few days. So Umar said, because he was number one, he was his son, and he said that should be decided by the next Khalifa. So he left it to the next Khalifa to make a decision on his son. And subhanAllah, how careful Umar was even on the deathbed. Right? So he did not want to be the one who was overrun by the situation he's in, and he has to make a decision about the life and death of his own son now at this point. Okay? Now, when the case came to Uthman, and he examined the case, Ali said it is not fair to let him off. Ali radiallahu anhu. So he said he should be executed. Now the Muhajirin said, how can you kill him today when his father was slain yesterday? Right? So Uthman is making a judgment when Umar has passed away and Uthman has become the Khalifa. Yeah, he's not making a judgment when Umar is alive, because when Umar is alive, they are still in the process of choosing the new Khalifa. Now, so Ibn Abbas, Ibn al-As said, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, Allah has spared you from involvement in this incident. It is something that did not happen during your reign. It happened in the time of Umar. So leave it alone. So Uthman paid the diya for those who had been slain from his own wealth. Now, this is one of the reports talks about that. He gave the diya. Diya is a blood money, and he let Ubaidullah. Now, other reports that talk about from Tariq Tabari. Al-Tabari is a famous historian of Islam, yeah? So he reports from Abu Mansur, he said that I heard Umadban, this is a Persian name. So Umadban bin al-Muzan. Muzan was the one who was killed by Ubaidullah. So he said that I heard Mansur say I heard him speaking about the killing of his father. Okay? And the Persian in Medina used to spend time together. So Fairuz passed by my father, and he had two-headed dagger. Who's the father talking about? Ramazan. Umadban is talking about that. And he took it from his hand and he said, what will you do with this? And he said, I feel safe with it. Now, so there's a exchange of dagger happened between two hands. It was witnessed from far that okay, the dagger was between these two people's hands. So later on, when Umar was killed, they found the same dagger that Fairuz had. So now, this is what happened when Ubaidullah found out. He went ahead and he killed them both. Right? Now, when Uthman became the Khalifa, now what happened was, one report talks about that there was nobody who was the inheritor of Ramadan was there. So hence, he obviously if there's no inheritor, then it's up to the Khalifa what he's going to decide. So he could have let it go, or he could have punished. But the other reports talk about that Umadban was still there. And he is the one, he got the judgment that Ubaidullah should be killed. And the people were rallying around Umadban to tell him not to kill Ubaidullah. And so when they got to the point where he had a chance to kill Ubaidullah, Umadban asked, can I be stopped for doing this action what I'm doing? And was said, no, you have full right for the retribution. And he said, basically, would he have any impact on him? And no, because what he was doing was shouting right. So he said, okay, then I forgive him, Ubaidullah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for the sake of the people who are ready around him. So first he made sure that people understand that he had the right for the retribution, but he did not practice that right, and he chose the other right he had also, which is the forgiveness. And he forgave Ubaidullah. Okay? So that's the other report about Ubaidullah, radiallahu anhu, and he was that good. Now there's some quick other judgments that was passed in the time of Uthman. Uthman had the ruling about if a blind person commits a crime. If he commits a crime, if he is not aware of what he's doing, let's say two people are sitting on a blind person, he has a stick in his hand, and he by accident hits somebody on the right side of the left side. Yeah? Because he is not aware of what he's doing, Uthman said in that case, he is not liable for the crime that he has committed. Okay? Now, in the case of two people fight with each other and they hurt and harm each other, so there is a qisas. Qisas is equal retribution. In the case of a killing, it's a killing as a capital punishment. In the case of somebody, let's say, chopped off the fingers, equal retribution will be the same. Or he has to pay the blood money for that kind of stuff. Okay, in Islam in general, as we do not harm the humans, it is not allowed for us to harm animals as well. Okay? Because we rush through the Umar's life very quickly, there are many examples in the life of Umar also, which I mentioned, talks about how he used to make sure that animals are not harmed. Same thing goes on in the time of Uthman as well. And even there were punishments for if it was known that somebody has harmed an animal, then he has to pay the price for harming that specific animal. So it was reported by Uthman bin Amr that Uthman bin Affan's time, a man killed a hunting dog, the like of which was unknown among other dogs. So, which is basically, qisas is you have to have a similar kind of thing you have to return back. Now, if something is very precious, now how do you weigh the value of that? So in that case, it was estimated at 800 dirham. So Uthman made him pay that amount. And another report says that he made him pay 20 camels for the price of a dog that he didn't kill. Okay? Even though it's a dog, it's not going to be, so you cannot say each dog is equal. Same thing. Like for example, you cannot say diamond, which is carbon, and coal, which is carbon as well, they're the same. Even though they both made of carbon, but they're two different things. Okay. So in general, in the time of Uthman, what happened was there were people who were going back to the apostasy of Uthman and Affan. Even though in the time of Abu Bakr Siddiq and Umar's time, the issue of the Murtadeen were taken care of. But in the time of Uthman, some of the people want to bring them back alive, were followers of Khaylamat al-Tab. And when that happened, Uthman made sure that, first of all, those people who are doing the apostasy, they are offered Islam again. Because in Islam, you don't just go and punish people left and right. It's more of a, first you give them a chance to repent or return back. If they don't, then the punishment for the apostasy was applied. Which is in Islam, apostasy, the apostates from the deen, which is similar as somebody does a treason from a state. Yeah. In that case, it is a capital punishment. Okay, so there was punishments for khamr, drinking khamr, which is alcohol, intoxicant in Islam. Intoxicant is, there's no had directly, it's more of a ta'zir up to the Khalifa. He can decide how much punishment should be. And Uthman, that he gave 3 men 40 lashes, and it is proven that he gave 80 as well. So 8 lashes, 40 lashes, that was Rasulullah we find. They used to hit him with the shoes, or they used to take a, for example, a bed sheet or something, roll it up, and then used to lash him with that, the person who drank. Affan also punishes his own brother, Walid ibn Uqba, he was a Sahaba of Rasulullah, and it was proven that he drank. And when the case was brought in front of Uthman ibn Affan, he applied the punishment on Walid ibn Uqba as well. Theft of a minor, if a child who has not reached the age of puberty, he's not supposed to be punished. Okay. It's as simple as that. So you don't see juvenile, what you call, prisons or something, where you build a child into a criminal and throw him into society. Unfortunately, in many places, something like this happens. And I used to go to the prison system also for some work, and I have witnessed myself that how people who probably have gone to jail for, they probably not make a mistake. But now they are along with the people who are criminals. And this is why they actually call jail or the prisons as university of crimes. So you become sharper and sharper. When you go in there, you know you meet the best of the best of them at one location. And you are able, unfortunately, instead of fixing the people, you find many of the jail system or prison system are making the situation worse, and especially when they come back to society. They are very alienated from society and they are not able to function in community. Very different subjects, some of them subjects. Strangling the society we're living in is a very common sickness. People will say left and right anything about anybody, and it's something that is so common that media talks about it more than ever. You go to the grocery store, for example, tabloids are talking about left and right about all the celebrities, what they're engaged in. And same way, people unfortunately follow the same thing. Islam is a very serious matter. Like for example, at the time of Uthman, he used to carry the high punishment of slandering. Slandering and people's honors. So he said that one man said to another, whose son of, and he's hinted to his mother, was an adulterer. Okay? Now, when he said that, Uthman bin Affan, he applied the had of slandering because calling the mother of that man that she has committed adultery, right? So obviously, unfortunately nowadays it's a very common thing for the people. Like in English language, it's just son of a boy, right? And what they're indicating here is they're talking about the mother of somebody, of someone else who has committed zina. So in this case, in Islam, there's a punishment with 8 lashes. I'll just leave it here. There's too many of the judiciary stuff we have. But inshallah, next time when we meet, we'll talk about the time of Uthman, how the Quran was compiled together into a shape of a mushaf. The first mushaf that was compiled at the time of Uthman, the one that the copies were made and distributed, and why they were